Welcome to Unusual Daily Life, History for Sleep. Each week, we invite you to slow down and step quietly into the daily rhythm of another time. These immersive stories are here to help you unwind, rest, or drift gently into sleep, all while exploring the calm, ordinary moments of history. Tonight, we journey to ancient Rome. It is the 1st century CE, and the eternal city stretches wide, a world of marble columns, crowded streets, temple smoke, and empire. But in this story, you are not a senator or a soldier. You are a baker, a pista, one of thousands whose hands shape the bread that feeds a city. You will rise before the sun, stoke the oven, knead the dough, and spend the day quietly working by firelight, serving rich and poor alike, until the final loaf cools and the coals are banked for another morning. So breathe in the scent of flour and wood smoke, and let yourself settle. And if you find comfort in these stories, consider subscribing. We share new, sleep-friendly journeys every week. Now, let us begin. The sun hasn't begun to think about rising yet, but you're already awake. As a baker in ancient Rome, your day begins well before the rest of the city stirs. Sleep isn't something you can afford, not when you need to get up before the rooster crows and the oven is stoked and ready to go by the first light of dawn. It's a necessary sacrifice. Your work feeds the city, and that work must be done. You live in a small apartment above your shop in the heart of Rome. The sounds of the city slowly begin to creep into your home. The rhythmic clang of a blacksmith's hammer, the excited shouts of merchants getting their day started. Your neighbors, a family of weavers, have begun their work for the day. The rhythmic clatter of their looms soon joins the symphony of sounds that is Rome. You pull on a simple tunic and wrap a woolen shawl around your shoulders against the chill of the early morning. No time for breakfast. You have no time for food at all today. A baker's life means you rarely get the chance to eat. But you make sure to keep a round loaf of your famous sweetbread with honey and nuts close by. You take pride in your baking. Each loaf is a small work of art. You descend the stairs to the bakery, and the smell of flour and yeast envelops you. It's a comforting aroma, one that has filled your nostrils since you were a child helping out in your father's bakery. Now that you're your own man, you've expanded the business and now employ several servants to help you keep up with demand. They've already begun their work, kneading dough and helping to shape loaves. A baker in ancient Rome isn't just someone who makes bread. You make a variety of baked goods, including cakes, tarts, and sweetbreads, many of which you'll deliver to wealthy patrons in the city. Some will be simple loaves of bread for the less fortunate, and some will be special orders for festivals or banquets. Today is the 1st of the month, so you know there will be a steady stream of customers coming in to buy their monthly ration of bread from the state. Soon enough, the doors to your shop are open and the first rays of sunlight stream through, setting the dust motes dancing in the air. It's time to get to work. One of your workers calls out to the other, "Give me that basket of figs." He's making today's specialty, a fig and honey cake for a wealthy widow in the forum. She's become a regular customer, much to your surprise, since she's more often seen in taverns than eating figs and honey. But everyone has their tastes, and you've never been one to judge your patron. With the oven preheated, you take your loaves and place them inside. You check the figures in your ledger. It's time to start mixing the dough for tomorrow's deliveries. The flour sifter is already filled with flour, and you reach for the next sack. A knock at the door makes you turn. It's a customer wanting to buy some bread before he heads off to work. As you wait for the bread to bake, you take a moment to look around your shop. Tools hang on the wall beside you, a gift from a grateful customer, and pictures of your family adorn every available surface. You may be a simple baker, but your work is vital to the city. You feed the people and the gods, for you also bake the sacred cakes that are offered to the divine. Suddenly, the familiar cry of "Beware!" fire echoes through the street. You look up and see a plume of smoke rising in the distance. Another fire. Fires are common in the ancient city, and you hope that this one is not near one of your favorite customers. Still, you couldn't bear it if something happened to them. You finish up with your current customer and watch him leave. Your mind is already calculating the extra work the fire will mean for you. You will now have to bake extra loaves for those who have lost their homes, and perhaps even sweeten some tarts for the children made homeless by the blaze. You shake your head. There will be time for that later. Right now, you have an order to fill. The The sun climbs higher in the sky and your shift begins to wind down. The last of your morning deliveries are made and you take a moment to wipe the sweat from your brow. It's hot, hard work, being a baker. Maybe someday you will all be able to afford to hire others to do the work while you spend your days more leisurely. For now though, the only thing on your mind is getting home before sundown to catch your breath. The city sleeps, or nearly so. You rise before it, long before the chorus of vendors, or the creep of ox carts, or the distant clang of the temple bells. In this moment, the world feels as though it belongs only to you, and to the fire you are about to coax into life. The air is cool inside your bakery. You sleep in the quarters just behind the oven room, in a cot pushed against a wall of worn plaster. As you sit up and swing your feet to the stone floor, the cold nudges you fully awake. It is a familiar sensation, one you've known for years, a reminder that your work begins before comfort sets in. You move slowly, there is no need to rush, everything in its rhythm. You light your small oil lamp first, its warm flame casting golden shadows against the walls. The faint scent of the olive oil, it burns, is familiar. This is your first companion of the day. In the main room, the bakery, or pastrinum as it's called, is still cloaked in darkness, save for the gentle glow of your lamp. You know the space well. The worn groove in the stone where the water jars rest, the long counter where dough is worked, the domed outline of the fernax, your oven, which rises at the heart of the room like a slumbering animal. You approach the oven. It's large, built from thick layers of stone and clay, rounded at the top like a rising loaf. You crouch near its mouth and begin your quiet ritual. The fire must not simply be lit, it must be prepared. You take dry twigs, the ones you gathered and set aside the day before, and nest them carefully into the ash bed. Then larger kindling, dry olive branches, some pine. You strike flint to iron. Once, twice, a spark leaps, catches, flutters. You breathe into it gently, your breath stirring the tiny flame like a whisper. Slowly, steadily, the fire responds. It crackles low, beginning to spread. You feed it in measured handfuls, watching as the oven's belly awakens. It will take an hour or more for the fernax to reach its baking temperature, long enough for the stone walls to absorb the heat and radiate it back with even intensity. Too much fire too soon, and the bread will scorch. Too little, and the loaves will come out heavy, damp, underdone. As the fire grows, so does the light in the room. Golden flickers play on the stone, casting warm shadows on the baskets, the bowls, the long-handled wooden paddles. You don't speak. There's no one to speak to yet. Just the soft sound of the oven drawing breath, the occasional pop of resin in the wood. While the oven heats, your second task begins. You move to the mixing bench and uncover a clay vessel that has been resting since the evening prior. Inside it lies fermentum, a portion of soured dough from the previous day. It bubbles faintly, alive with natural yeasts, smelling slightly sharp and earthy. This is your leavening, your quiet ally, the thing that brings life to flour. Your flour sits in large sacks against the far wall, delivered in bulk by mule cart from a local mill. It's a blend of triticum and farina, the latter milled more coarsely. You'll run your hands through it, feeling the texture, soft, granular, slightly warm from the day's previous sun. You draw water from a jug, collected from the public fountain the day before, cool and clear. You pour flour into the mixing trough, then add the water, then the fermentum. The proportions are instinctual. You've made this same mixture countless times. You begin to mix with a wide wooden spoon, then switch to your hands as the mass thickens. The dough clings to your fingers, stretching with each pull, heavy and pliant. Kneading is not hurried. It is slow, deliberate, even meditative. You push the dough away, fold it back, turn it, repeat. The bench creaks slightly beneath your weight. Your arms move in rhythm. In this moment, the world is reduced to texture and pressure, to the low sound of your palms against dough. Outside, faint light begins to touch the city. The narrow slit of your window glows faintly. Dawn has not yet broken, but it approaches. The dough will now rest, its structure forming quietly while the oven continues to warm. You cover the mass with a linen cloth and turn your attention to the baking tools. You rub oil into your wooden trays and peels, inspecting each one for wear. You brush flour across the stone counter, so it won't cling when you shape the loaves later. The scent of the oven begins to change, no longer just smoke, but heat. a dry, clean warmth laced with the sweetness of pine resin and charred wood. You step closer to the mouth of the fernax and hold your hand near the opening. You can feel the difference. The heat is steady now, not wild, contained, waiting. Soon, you'll shape the dough into panis quadratus, round loaves with scored tops and deep ridges marked with your bakery's stamp. Each one will bear a signature, a mark of accountability and pride. The city requires it, but you would do it regardless. It is the proof that you were here, that your hands touched these loaves, that this morning, like all the others, had meaning. Outside, the first cart rolls down the street. You hear the faint clatter of its wheels on the paving stones. A dog barks once, then falls silent. The first light of day stretches across the sky, pale and gold. You return to the dough. It has risen. You punch it down gently, divide it, shape it, mark it. The fire in the oven waits. The stone is hot, the air fragrant, the loaves ready. One by one, you slide them into the mouth of the fornax, their undersides hissing gently against the warm stone. You close the oven's mouth and exhale. Outside, the city stirs. But you are already deep into your day, and so begins another dawn in ancient Rome, in fire and flour and quiet labor. The morning's stillness is gone. As the sun rises higher over Rome's rooftops, the streets swelled with sound, slowly at first, then steadily, like a tide returning. The scrape of sandals, the rhythmic clatter of cartwheels, the cry of vendors setting up for the day. All across the city, the work of daily life unfolds in 1,000 small movements. Inside your pastrinum, the quiet labor of dawn gives way to the business of bread. You lift the oven's heavy stone cover and feel the wave of heat press outward. The loaves you slid in earlier are nearing readiness. Their surfaces are now cracked and browned, marked by the dry kiss of flame. The scent has changed too. Richer now toasted grain, warm crust, the deep, satisfying aroma of transformation. You slide each loaf out carefully, using your long wooden peel to lift them onto a cooling rack. They hiss as they hit the open air. Steam rises in soft curls. You pause to admire them, uniform in shape, ridged and golden, each bearing your stamp, your name, your mark, your craft. You do not speak this pride aloud. There is no one here to hear it, but you feel it, quiet and steady, like the heat that still radiates from the oven's stone. There's no time to linger. The next batch of dough is ready. You shaped it earlier, smaller rounds, rougher flour. These loaves are not for Rome's elite, but for the city's workers. Lighter in weight, heavier in grain, affordable, nourishing, filling. They will go to laundresses, to builders, to young boys who sweep the Senate floors. You place them into the oven carefully, your movements practiced and smooth. Then you step back, wiping your hands on your apron, and look to the front of the shop. The door opens. The first customers of the day arrive, not with ceremony, but with habit. A servant girl from a nearby domus, clutching a basket and a small clay coin pouch. She greets you with a nod, eyes low. She orders for marked loaves, not too dark, not too soft. You know her master. You've baked for his household for 5 years. You wrap the loaves in cloth, hand them over. She offers coin in return, 2 denarii and a small bronze token marked with the family crest, payment, and proof of patronage. You record the transaction in a leather-bound tally, carefully inscribed with charcoal. Even now, in the capital of an empire, commerce lives on trust and parchment. Soon, more arrive. A group of boys in tunics and dusty sandals, carrying baskets. They chatter among themselves in quick Latin, teasing, laughing, jostling elbows. They're end runners for the Thermopolium nearby, a public cookshop, where stew is ladled into clay bowls and bread is dipped into oil and broth. Their loaves must be cheap but plentiful, and they know which of your racks to point toward. You hand them 6 barley loaves, coarser and denser, ideal for soaking. One boy thanks you with a grin and runs off into the street. A woman enters next, older, her shawl drawn tightly over her head. She asks for the crust ends only. She cannot afford a full loaf today. You nod silently, gesture to a small sack by the counter. She offers a single coin and takes the bag with a quiet blessing. You do not stop her. You do not raise your prices. This is Rome, and bread must be shared, not hoarded. Between each visit, you turn the loaves with long iron tongs. The heat is a living thing. It shifts, it breathes. You must listen to it, feel it. Too much fuel and the outer crust will burn before the center bakes. Too little and the bread will sag, pale and soggy. You wipe sweat from your brow. The interior of the pastrinum is warm now, not stifling, but close. The stone walls hold the heat like a kill. Flour clings to your forearms, your tunic. Your sandals press into a floor powdered white. In the back room, the donkey mill turns slowly. You can hear the dull rumble of the millstone, the occasional snort or hoof step of the animal walking its quiet circle. Grain is poured from sack to hopper. The flour it produces is darker, more textured. This batch will be used for state rations. You participate in Rome's grain dole, the government-run program that distributes bread to the city's poor. Soldiers and officials. Once each week, a curator Annone arrives with his assistants, inspecting your stocks, weighing your loaves, comparing against ledgers. The bread is collected in baskets, marked, and hauled to designated stations. It is not glamorous work. You are paid in fixed amounts, not by negotiation, but by decree. Yet it is steady. It connects you to something larger than your shop. The empire depends not just on conquests and coin, but on bread, on bakers, on you. From time to time, you step outside the shop for a moment of air. The street is alive now. A potter pushes a cart full of clayware, his wheels rattling on the uneven stones. A group of slaves walk past, carrying water, amphary balanced on poles. Children dart between their legs, giggling. In the distance, a soldier leans against a column, tearing a piece of bread with his teeth, his gaze far away. You breathe in the mingled sense of dust, sweat, olive oil, fresh bread, roasting fish. Rome in full motion. And yet, back inside your pastrinum, the rhythm remains yours. You shape new loaves with the apprentice, gently folding figs into some, honey into others. These will go to wealthier clients, families who expect sweetness with their midday meal. You dip your fingers into a bowl of crushed herbs, sprinkling rosemary over the top of a delicate batch destined for a magistrate's wife. Time passes, unhurried. There are no clocks here, only tasks, only gestures, only heat and hunger, and the satisfaction of serving them both. As midday approaches, you pour a cup of watered wine, sit on a stool near the oven's mouth, and break a piece from one of the imperfect loaves. The crust is firm, the interior soft. You chew slowly, your muscles finally at ease. It is not a feast, but it is enough. The donkey mill turns, the fire hums. Outside, Rome continues to move, but here, within the walls of your bakery, there is stillness and purpose, and the next batch is rising. The sun now begins its descent behind the hills of the Aventine. A soft golden glow spills into the narrow streets of Rome, catching the dust in the air and painting long shadows across the walls. The sharp bustle of the midday hours fades into a slower, more deliberate rhythm. Inside your pastrinum, the energy changes. The oven still glows hot, not as fierce as it was at midday, but steady, reliable. You open the heavy stone cover once more and release a pocket of heat that warms your face. The final loaves of the day are almost done. These are the late orders, smaller batches for evening meals, last-minute deliveries for patrons who forgot to send their servants earlier. Some are enriched with dried fruit or anise seed. A few are flavored with cheese, a touch of honey, not for the working poor. These are small indulgences for households with oil lamps in every room and silks folded neatly in cedar chests. You move with practiced grace, sliding the loaves out and laying them to cool on wooden racks. The crusts crackle softly as the hot air escapes. The scent in the room is complex now. The sweetness of figs, the salt of aged cheese, the faint temps of burnt flour at the edges. Your apprentice returns from a delivery, a quiet boy, barely 16. He carries an empty basket and the small, clinking pouch of coins from a merchant's wife. She sent compliments. He says, the bread was still warm when it arrived. You nod and send him to fetch water. While he's gone, you walk the perimeter of the shop, checking the day's work. The storage bins are low on flour. Tomorrow, you'll send 4 more. The olive oil urn is half full. The mixing boards are dusted and clean. You pause to sharpen your dough blade on a stone, not because it is dull, but because the act itself is calming, quiet, familiar. You return to the cooling racks. The heat has faded slightly from the loaves. You turn them gently, inspecting for even bake. Tap the bottoms. Listen for the hollow sound that tells you they're ready. 1 or 2 will be held overnight. You'll offer them discounted in the morning. A few more will be sliced and soaked in broth for your own dinner. The apprentice comes back with the water jug. You thank him, and the two of you sit briefly on stools near the oven, resting your hands on your knees. There is no talking. There doesn't need to be. The fire crackles gently, and the stone floor radiates a dry, comforting warmth. Outside, the light continues to dim. Through the open window, you hear the soft murmur of the street. A fruit seller calls out his final wares. A pair of sandals scrape lightly past your threshold. Somewhere, a dog barks, once, twice, then falls silent. Rome never sleeps, not entirely, but it eases into the night like a tide drawing back from the shore. You rise to complete the final tasks of the day. The mixing bowls are scraped, rinsed with warm water, and stacked upside down to dry. The work table is swept, then wiped with a cloth soaked in diluted vinegar. Then, the flour bins are topped with cloth and sealed against rodents. The jars are checked. The bench is cleared. You'd prepare the next day's fermentum, a small piece of leftover dough, wrapped loosely in linen and stored in a clay pot. It will rest overnight, fermenting quietly as you sleep, gathering flavor and strength. Tomorrow's bread depends on it. The continuity of the craft, the silent thread from one day to the next, lies in this single, small act. At the back of the shop, the fire is banked. You do not extinguish it entirely. The coals are pushed into a mound, ash drawn over them to slow the burn. If the conditions are right, they will still be warm by morning, and the fire will be easier to rekindle. It is a simple way of carrying today into tomorrow. The apprentice prepares to leave. He gathers his cloak and basket, and with a quiet nod, slips out into the dusk. You hear his footsteps fade down the street, the gate closing softly behind him. You are alone again, just as you were at the start of the day. You pour a small cup of watered wine, tear a corner from a loaf that cooled improperly and couldn't be sold. You sit on the stool again. Slowly this time, let your shoulders relax. Let your hands rest, open in your lap. You chew slowly, tasting the crust, the crumb, the salt in the air. The oil lamp burns quietly beside you, its flame fluttering slightly with the shifting air. The oven no longer roars. It breathes, warm, patient, constant. And in this moment, with the day's labor behind you, the tools cleaned, the loaves cooled, there is a kind of peace, a rare stillness that comes not from silence alone, but from completion. The sense that something has been done well, with care, and without haste. You look around your pastrinum. No marble, no mosaics, just stone and wood, linen and ash. But here, within these walls, you've shaped something lasting. Not grand, not famous, but essential. Bread, made each day for those who need it. Marked with your hand, brought from raw grain to nourishment through fire and patience. The sun has slipped below the rooftops now. The sky glows soft orange and then fades into lavender. You finish your wine, rise, extinguish the lamp. The night is beginning. And soon, so too will your rest. Night has arrived. It doesn't fall suddenly in Rome. It gathers, like mist, pooling in the corners of the streets, softening the edges of columns and rooftops, darkening the hollows of alleyways, until finally the city is cloaked in a quiet, amber haze. The lamps are lit. You hear them first, the soft scrape of flint against steel, then the small breath of flame. Along the narrow streets, oil lamps are mounted on doorposts and ledges, each flickering to life in turn. Their glow is soft and uneven, casting long shadows across stone. The sounds of the day have all but faded. No more market cries, no more mule carts echoing across the flagstones. Just the occasional clatter of a closing shutter, the distant hush of footsteps, and the faint hum of evening voices, lowered now, reserved for supper, for story, for prayer. Inside your pastrinum, the stillness is deeper. The oven has gone quiet. Its stones are warm to the touch, but the roar of fire is gone. The coals rest beneath a layer of ash, subdued, conserved, waiting for morning. You move slowly now, as if not to disturb the quiet that has settled over your space. You pass once more through the main room, running your hand along the wood of the work table. There's a comfort in its smoothness, worn down by years of flour and forearms, of labor and repetition. You tap the cooling racks gently, a habit more than a task, a note with quiet satisfaction that tomorrow's orders are already arranged, each labeled and placed in its proper basket. In the corner, the unused dough from today is covered in cloth, left to sour gently overnight. Even in sleep, the bakery breathes. Your living quarters are just beyond a short wooden door, plain, without ornament. Inside is a low cart, a small chest, a wash basin, and a stool. On the wall, a niche holds a clay oil lamp and a single carved figurine, a household god passed down from your father. His features are worn smooth from years of touch. You nod to him as you pass, as always, without words. You set down your tools, unlace your sandals, stretch your arms, feeling the gentle pull of muscles long used. Then you sit on the edge of your cot, elbows on knees, and listen. To nothing. Or nearly nothing. There's a rhythm to this hour, a calm, unhurried pace that requires nothing of you. The body begins to soften, the breath slows, the senses release their grip. Through the narrow window, you can see a sliver of the sky. A star appears, then another. In the distance, a nightbird calls, low and unmelodic, but comforting in its repetition. Someone sings softly across the alley, a lullaby in a tongue not your own. You do not understand the words, but the tone is familiar. Tired, tender, and slow. You take a cloth and wash your hands, not because they are still dirty, but because the act signals an ending. You wipe away the day's flour, the residue of heat, the faint stickiness of dough and ash. Then you lie down. The cot creaks faintly beneath you, a familiar sound. You pull a thin woolen blanket over your body, feeling the coolness of the night settle into your skin, chased back gently by the retained warmth of the ovens, stones still radiating through the floor. You stare at the ceiling. There are cracks in the plaster. You've never repaired them. They don't bother you. They shift with the seasons. Just as your work does. Just as the fire does. Just as Rome does. You closed your eyes, and yet your mind continues. Not racing, not urgent, just remembering the bread that cracked too soon, the customer who smiled and said nothing, the loaf you gave away to the boy with no shoes, the fire this morning, slow to start, the warmth of the wine, the scent of rosemary, the quiet. You think of tomorrow, but not with anxiety. There is no dread here, only the knowledge that the day will come, and when it does, you will rise, light the lamp, stoke the fire, prepare the dough, bake the bread, mark the loaves, serve the city. Not in glory, not in noise, but in rhythm, in warmth, in purpose. And as your breathing slows and your thoughts grow quieter, you feel the comfort of this life, a life with shape, with simplicity, with certainty. You drift. And outside, Rome continues, vast and ancient, filled with dreams and noise and silence. But here, in this quiet room, there is only the breath of sleep, the whisper of cooling stone, and the promise of another dawn. Good night, baker. Your work is done.